It's so weird how fast your life can just derail. 1 minute, my fiancé, the guy who was a combat vet, who became this brilliant doctor, who's literally the strongest person I know, was just there. The next, he was crashing. It was a total shock. A random virus torpedoed his heart right into severe failure. I just watched them rush him to the ICU, intubate him, and take over his breathing. In the tiny window when he could still communicate, he looked right at me and squeezed my hand. His request was the first thing he said. It was weak, but absolutely firm. Don't tell anyone yet. He didn't want the fuss. He didn't want people worrying. Everyone sees him as this unbreakable man, and I knew he was terrified of showing this weakness. So I agreed. I became his wall, his secret keeper. He has to get better, I kept telling myself. It was my only prayer. We needed a miracle, and a miracle meant a heart transplant. That meant being transferred. We went in an ambulance to a specialty center in another state. That's when the real hell started. It wasn't the medical stuff so much as the system. Everything was just so slow. A whole weekend wasted because the necessary tests couldn't happen. Postponed evaluations, committee schedules. Our entire future felt like it was just a file sitting on some doctor's desk. The hotel room was 3 blocks away. It felt like a different planet. When night came, I could hear the city outside, but my own internal screaming, it was trapped behind a soundproof wall. I was living a paused life. I'd wake up for the hospital disinfectant and the machine noise. Then I'd go back to the cold hotel bed and just stare at the ceiling. Sometimes I'd trace the cracks in the ceiling tiles for hours, just to feel like I was focusing on something other than his heart rate. Everyone I loved was living their normal lives. I felt like a total ghost. I'd scroll through old photos of us, hiking or celebrating a promotion, and it felt like looking at strangers. It was hard to remember who we were before the beeping monitors became the soundtrack to our life. I had people who loved us, but I couldn't reach out. I was respecting his wish, and it was absolutely tearing me apart. I'd sit by his bedside for 10 hours, walk back to that quiet room, and just want to scream, but I couldn't. So I started writing online. No names, no specifics, just the terrifying, isolated truth I felt like I was shouting into the void. But the void answered. The comments came pouring in. Strangers shared their ICU stories. When they shared their isolation, I felt like I could finally breathe. One comment hit me so hard. The patient can hear you. Your voice is the only connection they have. That was it. I stopped being silent in his room. I told him everything. Silly jokes, TV plot lines, the story of our first date, everything he loved. I spoke in a low, strong voice. It was the only way I knew how to fight for him. They gave me practical advice, too. Ask for support, even if you can only tell friends. It's a tough time. And the big one, you have to take care of yourself. I was running on fumes, and these strangers were my only support system. Waiting for the transplant committee's decision was pure torture. The doctors would come in and give us warnings like, he may only have 3 weeks left. Every time I felt like my own heart stopped. I sat there just staring at the cardiac monitor. I was terrified the beeping would just stop. The legal advice from the commenters was grim, but necessary. Since we weren't married, I had no decision-making power without the paperwork. It forced me to face how utterly powerless I was. The despair just overwhelmed me. I typed out this confession once, full of fear. This feels like the real Squid Game. If they don't like us, if they don't think he's worthy, he dies. All my rage and fear were in that one sentence. Then, finally, approval. The word hit me, I almost crumbled. All my strength just drained away. Tears were streaming, but I couldn't make a sound. We'd gotten over the first mountain. He was officially on the transplant list. The next morning, before sunrise, I woke up on the hospital couch. My phone was ringing. I saw organ transplant coordinator. My breath caught. The nurse was calm, but the words were a physical shock. A donor heart is available. I was frozen. That one short sentence lifted the crushing weight of months, but it also brought a terrifying new weight. The convergence of hope and tragedy. I'll never forget it. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, nurses rushing in, and that horrible feeling of signing everything away. They told me the heart was being transported, and that we needed to prepare him immediately. I remember looking at his face, still pale, and just whispering, "You got this. You are so strong." It was the most important conversation of our lives, and it was just a few broken whispers before they wheeled him away. Every single minute until the OR doors swung shut felt like a decade. Relief is not joy, by the way. It feels like getting the wind knocked out of you, followed by the sheer, sudden weight of total exhaustion. All those months of holding my breath just rushed out. I was trembling in the waiting room. My first thought was gratitude. Deep, profound gratitude. Not just for the doctors, but for the anonymous strangers online who kept me from going under. I went back to my diary and wrote, "I didn't know it would help this much." They truly saved me from drowning in silence. I thought about my fiancé, his kindness, his brilliance, how he always looked out for everyone. And I thought about the anonymous donor, a life ended, giving us the most incredible, ultimate gift, a future. That sacrifice, that debt of life, is immense. I will carry it forever. Now, we have real hope, not the fragile, desperate kind. It's a tangible, surgical chance. He made it through the operation. He's fighting. I knew he would. I look at him now, still weak, but with a new heart beating steadily in his chest, and my vow has changed. I still vow he'll get better, but now I vow to honor that donor's gift, to never waste this incredible second chance. We just have to keep moving forward. Together, we have a shared future again. I can imagine our wedding, our life. It feels close enough to touch. So if you're standing by someone in the hardest moment, holding a secret or carrying a burden you can't share, please listen to me. Don't forget to care for yourself. You are in a war. You need supplies. Don't be afraid to ask for help, even if it's from total strangers online. Sometimes they are the only people who can hold you up.